Hey there, YouTubers. So, two of my favorite motherboards. I bought a crap ton of 600 series motherboards, and so we're going to compare these two. Just got this one. This is the Gigabyte UD Z790, and on the left is my Aorus Extreme AX Z690. All right, so obviously both of these will overclock CPUs, right? But this has a Z790 chipset, Z690. Out of the box, this is good with all the 12th gen and 13th gen CPUs that are out there up to the current date, which is December 9th, 8th, sorry, December 8th. Over here, compatible with 12th gen, i9 12900KS and 13th gen. This will be compatible with a BIOS update. So I've removed the heat shields on this guy, and also popped this off because it's tough to get my graphics card out for testing when it's up against one of the air coolers. So just to call that out in case I forget it. All right, biggest similarities, CPU, right? DDR5, 4 sticks of that. I left 2 in here just so we'd have that. I also left my i9 13900KF because after this video, the CPU is going in here, and we're going to run the same benchmarks we did before. PCIe 5.0, both of these, all right. And then you see the differences. Get a lot more PCIe slots on this one, right? So 4 full size, 2 of the smaller ones. Over here you only get 3. Most people probably don't need this many, right? I know with me, I like to obviously have spot for at least 1 graphics card. 2 graphics cards is nice, depending on what I'm doing, right? So, and then sometimes I might have on the other ones a Wi-Fi card or a place to add additional USB 3.0s or 3.2 Gen 1s. But, this is definitely more than most people need. Now over here, we end up with 4 M.2 spots versus the 3 over here, all right? So I think every one of these is Gen 4, and I believe these are as well. So you lose, 1 M.2 over here. You gain 1 over here, but you lose additional PCIe slots. So not necessarily a huge deal. You can see I've left the stickers on these. Really, you're supposed to take them off, but we will, probably be reselling this at some point and getting the Z790 version of this. All right, so I think we're zoomed out far enough. We can talk about the other features. Being that these are, better motherboards in my opinion than buying something from ASRock, and then some of the cheap, say, Asus Primes out there. This has a lot of the connectors or headers are protected with plastic enclosure, plastic casing, however you want to describe that. So that's a nice feature that is on both these motherboards. They both have the same amount of SATAs connectors, so you would have the same amount of hard drives or 2.5-inch solid state drives, regardless of which one you go with. Both obviously have a CMOS battery. Both of these have the same front panel connectors. Both of these allow you to have a BIOS update without having a CPU, GPU, or RAM connected, all right? So if you haven't seen my video doing that with this one or some of the other Gigabytes products that I've done it with, you should check that out. Both of these have a reset switch for basically the BIOS here, so you don't have to pop out the battery. When is that useful? Well, this RAM here isn't 100% compatible with this motherboard. So if I were to kick this up to 5600 and it doesn't work, and it won't boot out of it, I could, reset it there. Most of the time, after a few times turn it on and off or on its own, it'll get out of there. But I do have some new DDR5 RAM on the way, and we do have some other stuff that we've been using in these. Unfortunately, it's fixed at 4800 megahertz. So let's see. We talked about the CPU, but basically these have the same type of method of getting the CPU out. And you'll see people buying CPU frames in here, which seems a little more useful for 12th gen than it has for 13th. Both these have USB 2.0s on them. They both have ARGB and RGB Type-C header. So if you have that on your case or USB 3.0s, both of these have a USB 3.2 header. It's kind of unfortunate they don't have two, but when you add those features, then you have to give up something. Of course, 24-pin power connectors, both those have that. Now, the case fan headers, this has them all, a lot of them grouped together down here, where this one has them all spread out. I didn't necessarily count them all up, but they look to be about equivalent. You can tell, pretty good setup as far as the heat sinks go. This one looks beefier on, we'll call this the north side. And otherwise, these seem to be similar. And, the VRMs and the power stage is very, very similar in these motherboards. Now, big difference, well, maybe not a big difference, but CPU power connector. The Gigabyte UD Z790 has two 1x8s, or basically you call that two 2x4s. Where the Aorus, surprisingly, and I don't know if the Z790 version of this has changed, that only has a 1x8 and a 1x4. Does that really matter? Well, with these new i9s, I think it's a little better to spread out the load over more of those connectors over the, additional cables. So looking at this, otherwise, this one, inside of a computer, depending on what you have, might look a little sharper when you put the heat shields over it. Otherwise, these are very similar, both very nice looking. Definitely think some of the features over here, are nicer. But that said, let's go ahead and look at what's on the I/O shield portion of this. All right, so not the smartest thing to do, stacking motherboards on top of each other without some kind of protection. But luckily, if I lose a motherboard here, it's not going to kill me because I have probably 50 or 60 of them here at the house. So looking at the I/O shield, if you happen to be in the back of your computer, Lord knows this looks sharper than that, right? I mean, this is just, I guess that's steel. I always think this is made out of aluminum, but, what did they do? Press that in, it's really very basic, right? Where this one looks a lot nicer. These are engraved, where these are painted on. So it just looks a lot sharper. Feature-wise, what are we talking the difference here, really? Now, once again, on the bottom, this is the Z790. This is the Aorus Z690. So I have absolutely no use for this PS2 style connector. I definitely think this would have been more useful for me to have those four set up like that. But Wi-Fi, now I didn't show it. This guy has this newer antenna that may be better. I haven't done any testing with it to find out, so we'll have to check that out later. Um, so obviously, both have Wi-Fi. Then one of these, there's your dedicated BIOS, and this one has a dedicated BIOS USB here as well, right? So that's what that BIOS update button. Both these have HDMI and DisplayPort. Both have a Type-C Charlie connector. All right, then otherwise you've got about the same amount of USB 3.2 Gen 1s, 2.5 gig LAN, and then the one thing that I definitely like about this is the ability to plug in fiber optic versus what this has. Okay, so you've got microphone line out or microphone and headphone. Here you've got line out, line in, and microphone. So now, for a lot of you, it's kind of a headache to do these BIOS updates. You may want to consider buying something like this UD. These are reason I'm really comparing these folks. These are pretty much right at the same price point. If you were trying to buy this Aorus, most places $199 right now. This guy, a lot of times, is more expensive, but I picked this up at Newegg, the Z790 UD, for $199. So the price point is exactly the same. Performance, is going to be pretty much, I'm expecting the same. But, if you are not keen to do BIOS updates, you probably want to go with something like the Z790 over the Z690. But otherwise, pretty much the same features. Performance is going to be about the same. I don't show you the BIOS in this video, but the BIOS is pretty much going to be exactly the same between these. There's not a whole lot difference. It's just a nicer look to this one, right? So it's like, we could say a Toyota and a Lexus, right? Some of the cars are almost exactly the same, but the Lexus looks sharper, you know. So I don't know if that's the best comparison, but hey, that's all I got. Thanks for checking out the video, folks. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.